Okay. Hey guys, welcome back to the Shooters Only Paintball Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hernandez. And before we get to our interview today, I wanted to tell you that thank you, number one, for everyone that's followed us along, checked in on the journey right here. We're only 2 episodes deep. This is our 3rd one today. But thanks for the likes, the comments, the shares. It was really cool to see some of the discussion in some of these videos already. So thank you for doing that and following along. We will be cross-posting to an audio-only format like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, something like that. So you'll have that in addition to the YouTube show that we're doing right now. And now let's get into our guest. This is a guy that has helped me out in Red Creek in many ways. He's going to deny that, but he played a pivotal role in doing some things. A guy who is a northerner, plays at 12th Street, has a lot of the history and a big contributor into the paintball community in the past. So I'm excited to talk today. Number one, Brody Dixon.
Hey guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're in his humble abode out here in Clinton, Utah, correct?
Clinton, Utah, yep.
And I told him, I was like, this is probably one of the coolest backdrops yet.
Yeah, it's very 90s. So, a lot of people want like move into a house and like redo everything, but I've been seeing a lot of 90s like fashion come back around. Like I never thought I'd see neon ever be back in fashion again, and the square glasses, and now mullets, I guess, are cool again.
Mullets were cool in high school for me, but it was kind of like fringe. It was like, dude, like that's a mullet. We're like, yeah, dude, it's party, it's a mullet. But you're right, a lot of those 90 patterns are coming back. So are you saying you're setting a trend?
I'm ahead. I'm ahead of the trend. So I'm just gonna like just let it roll.
You waited it out long enough to where it's like we're back in fashion.
That's exactly it.
No, that's awesome. And I think so. Brody as a paintballer, right? And not necessarily on your fashion sense.
Sure. Wow.
But your paintballer side of things. I know Brody. He was one of the guys that I called up and I was like, dude, I have a problem. I bought too much land for a great price. That's a story that we can get into later. Yeah. But I was like, I did not make enough money or did not budget enough money for air. So here I am planning Red Creek in some of the first events. And I'm like, dude, I heard you have air. We didn't have a relationship prior to that. I was just like, how do we figure this out? So that's how me and Brody first met, but a huge help to me. And I think, how did you acquire all that stuff? Because you were in a position that not many paintballers are in where, I have a $5,000 compressor at home. I've got bulk tanks. Like no one has that stuff, right? Yeah. So tell me a little bit about kind of how you've evolved and become like a contributor to the community that way.
No, I mean, that's a great question. So I guess it would kind of start like, for those of you who are around about 2013 era is kind of when I became active as far as like an actual like promoter of games and things like that. As some of you may know, I actually, owned what the business that used to be called Paradise Lost Paintball. Back in the day, this was like the old Velocity Field out in Marriott, Slaterville. Nice. And it was kind of just obtaining all the gear for that, is what kind of put me in that position as far as, having all the equipment and whatnot. And it's always been kind of my goal to help out the paintball community. And I've been kind of quiet and, I didn't want to like come out and try to like, promote anything because I didn't want to step on anybody's toes. We did have brick and mortar, businesses, in the city in Ogden. And I didn't want to confound that at all or take away from that in any shape, way, or form. So, I kind of just basically took all my gear and just kind of put it in my garage. And then, unfortunately, that business ended up closing down. And so it's just like, okay, like there's very few people left, in the area that can support. So, I just was like, I can step in and I can start, kind of helping out and start, building the community and supporting the community. But Paradise Lost, man, that was a wild ride.
That's awesome.
Wild ride.
So me and Brody have many exchanges, swapping tanks and picking stuff up for Red Creek stuff. And I love talking to paintballers because it's a different like tune. Like, right. Everyone has their hobby and it's like, oh, if you have this hobby, that hobby, like when you talk to someone that's in the same hobby, they're going to freak out and everyone gets to geek and goof and be a different level. But I feel like I never have enough time to talk to Brody, and hopefully we're able to cover a lot today because he's told me about these legendary stories of Paradise Lost. I consider legendary because for someone to take a step and build a paintball field, I'm not saying that we're God's gift to paintball.
Right.
But I am saying that, hey, this is something it goes beyond just playing.
Right.
You're not the guy in the forum that says, I want better games. I want bigger games, and has no concept of how to get that done.
Yeah.
Now you start making that checklist and getting into what that was. So Paradise Lost was kind of unique in the way that the field that you used and how it came about. Tell me about like the origin story of Paradise Lost and the success. And
Sure. So it kind of, it's an interesting story. So I guess kind of first off, I should say, like, you know, a lot, and this isn't trying to take away from anybody, you know, anybody in their fields or whatnot, like with Aliens in the Rockies or Battlefield. But Paradise Lost really had the potential of being like the best field in Utah, like full stop. And there was a couple reasons why. As far as logistics, kind of like with the show with Alan that we were talking about last time, I agree. Like there are some logistics that really help out turn on games. Like for example, Paradise Lost was in Marriott Slaterville. It was just one exit north of 12th Street in Ogden. So you had, you know, 2 miles away from the freeway. Yep. You know, it was out in kind of farmland that was really a flood zone. And so no development was taking place nearby and would never take place nearby, you know, unless somebody wanted to lose their house. Cool. The field had natural boundaries all around it because it was really kind of more of a swamp land, and the land that we had was actually raised up. Oh. And so it was really kind of nice because that also helped with like security issues because, you know, nobody could like trespass on the land without like a certain route, so you didn't have to fence anything off.
I picture like a castle with a moat and a drawbridge.
There was a castle. There was a castle, and you know, awesome. I'll show you the Google image, and maybe you can, you know,
I'll throw it on.
Yeah, superimpose it. Yeah, but yeah, it had like a water feature. It was really more a peninsula, but we called it the island, and it did legit have a moat around it, like water and everything.
That's cool.
Yeah, and so it there was a lot of different things as far as logistics go that really played in favor. Yeah. Another thing that was really interesting that was a huge advantage to us was, again, it used to be Velocity Paintball. And I don't really know the history of Velocity. Alan kind of talked a little bit about it in the last podcast. If you haven't seen that, go watch it. It's great.
Thank you. Hey, nice plug.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Smith too. Chad Smith is great too. I watched a couple of his videos and they're great too. Check those out.
He has no bias. He has no bias here sitting in front of you. Do.
No. Well, no, that's good. It's good because, like, you know, especially with like Chad. I mean, we're kind of going on a tangent. I watched Chad's video. I was like, man, I see a lot of myself in Chad like 10 years ago. Yeah. Like I used to be that passionate about it. I'm not now, but you know,
Chad is listening to this right now. Yeah. Chad is he loves paintball content, and he even loves Utah paintball content. So he's listening as this thing's being released. And Chad at home, like, I gave you the credit to where it was like, dude, this guy lives and breathes paintball. Yeah. I think that's his career. He's told me, and he's just like, dude, I want to travel the world and play all the best paintball fields. Yeah. And he's like, I want to somehow monetize that and figure it out to where I get paid doing that. He just wants to do that as a career.
Don't start a field. Don't start a field.
Don't start a field. Whatever you do, don't do that. That's funny. That is hilarious. We're gonna clip that, I'm sure. That's funny. But you're saying, Chad, you see a little bit of yourself in Chad.
Yeah. So kind of to go back a little bit of my story. So I see a lot of myself in Chad. I was up in Logan when the whole Velocity thing was, like, you know, in play.
Give me the basis of Velocity, because here's a noob that when Alan mentioned it, we didn't really expand on it enough. Give me the basis of what you're talking about.
So Velocity, I mean, it was the same area. I played out there once. Okay. I didn't play any scenario games. Like, the difference between the Velocity business model, from what I could see, and Alan would obviously know more because he was very intimate with that business, where I was just, you know, one-time consumer. Sure. But in my mind, the flaw of Velocity Paintball was it tried to be a scenario, you know, field, and also like a full-time field. Okay. And so in my mind, that's where the business model was wrong, is because when you do a full-time field, you're really just like out there constantly trying to monitor, you know, players and everything else, and really it's just, you're just losing time and money. And in my mind, it's just better to just come in, do a scenario event, you know, capitalize on, you know, your cost versus, you know, your income, get out, and don't just sit there and let that become a millstone around your neck. So that was really it.
So that's the Velocity business model. So the Velocity as a whole was a paintball field. Yeah. Ran by who? Do you know?
I don't know who it was.
Dang, look at this. We're gonna have to find out who that was.
Yeah.
Alan would have probably known, but regardless, yeah, we'll find out what that is. Do you know about how long they ran for?
I think they closed down around 2009, 2008, I believe. It was kind of hard because, again, Facebook was barely becoming a thing. The paintball community was really more in forums. And so you really didn't know what was going on. And when you did, you saw somebody post on a forum, and then, you know,
it's like
social media was a little bit less disciplined back then because, you know, people would, you know, talk crap and then it just blow up everywhere, you know. Where like now, like people are kind of a little bit more like, okay, take this with a little grain of salt. This probably isn't true or whatnot.
Gotcha.
So, you know, when I was up at Utah State, and I did see a lot of things about velocity as far as closing down and things like that. When it comes to Chad, I was a lot like him, where I was going up to a field called Xanadu. Up there in Logan Canyon, and I was playing every weekend, and I was going up there early and cleaning up the field and organizing games and all that kind of stuff. I didn't have 15 cameras, so I couldn't afford that.
So were you pulling out like college buddies and stuff like that? You're grabbing people?
Yeah, we were just grabbing anybody that would come. You know, there was one guy up there. He's not up there now, but you know, we'd work with him, and I remember we even set up like a couple of scenario games. You know, just total grassroots. You know, and that was it. Yeah, and we had a pretty good group of people up there. We built the community. I think we got about 25, 30 strong, you know. And again, this is without, you know, I mean, Facebook was still kind of becoming a thing.
So you're like you're picking up your Domino's carry out pizza, and you're like, hey dude, you wanna see some cool stuff on Saturday? Like come into this back area. This is a paintball gun.
So I was living up on campus housing, and like, you know, everyone I would go to church with is like, hey, do you want to play paintball? Hey, do you want to play paintball? Yeah. You know, we'd be sitting in class and be like, hey, you know what we should do? We should play paintball. You know. And
I love that because like I think a lot of paintballers that love the sport, they advocate that way. They're like, ask me about paintball, and then they'll never shut up. I think everyone does that when you have a great like a great experience. And now it's like this is the guerrilla marketing to where it's like if I can get one or two more guys, that's a bigger game in Logan Canyon, or what did you call it?
Xanadu. So there was an old Xanadu closed down restaurant. So it was just right across the road.
Nice.
Yeah, in Logan Canyon. And no, it was an awesome field. You know, it was like the problem with it though was like it was everybody knew about it, and so a lot of people would use it as like a target range. You know?
Yeah.
So you get all these, and I'm a redneck, so I can say this. You get all these dumb rednecks that would come up.
Whoa.
I know.
You offended maybe 1% of our. I'm just kidding. I don't know who our player.
Well, once I say what it is, I'll be like, yeah, those guys were dumb. So, anyways, what they would do is they just bring up like whatever PlayStations or TVs or Xboxes, computers, and they bring their rifles and they just shoot the thing. You know, just bust it all up, leave it like use it as a shooting range, and they never clean up their crap. And so, like, I remember one time, like, a kid that we were playing with, like, I think he was, like, 14, 15 years old. He slid into a bunker and he cut his knee on a piece of, like, sharp glass from a TV screen.
And here you are in a canyon. You know what I mean? There's no need for glass, and it's just a dump zone.
Yeah, it was. And so it was really hard because, you know, we'd come in and we'd try to clean it up, but we were always bouncing off against, you know, all these idiots that would just kind of use it to their own, you know, just no consideration whatsoever. I mean, I remember we watched one idiot guy. He started the field on fire because he was shooting a gas tank. And it was just, it was just like, you know, and it takes a special kind of stupid to do that, you know?
What's the best case scenario when you go shoot a gas tank? Like, you know what's going to happen. You know exactly what you're doing. That's crazy because that's I think, on the higher level of things. That's how fields get shut down. And one taste in some politician's mouth or someone in the county or the district or whatever, now all of a sudden you go to approach it like, hey, we really want to do something more organized, something a little bit better over here. And we talked a little bit on Alan's podcast, how do we get there? And it's like, these are the people that are working against us, and they don't even know it. It's just selfish, let's go shoot some stuff in the backyard. So
no, and sadly that field got shut down. You know, they put up cement what are those cement barriers? Yeah, those barricades to where you could pull off and everything else. Like, I went up there earlier this year, and I haven't been up there for like 10 years.
Wow.
And, you know, we just kind of walked around, and it was kind of funny because, like, there were still remnants left over from when we planned a big scenario game.
Oh, nice.
Like, left over. I was like, I remember tying the tape on this tree, you know?
That's cool.
And so, but that's true. And that's kind of the problem that we have with Ogden Paintball is, you know, we got a really good agreement with the airsofters, and there's a really good collaboration now between us and them. Started off a bit more antagonistic because, you know, there were people that were a little bit more zero sum, in both communities. And we kind of got the cooler heads to, talk to one another and be like, okay, how can we, help each other out?
Balance it. Yeah.
Yeah. But we have the same problem. Like, if the airsofters are, ironically, both the airsofters or paintballers don't show up on that field, other people will move into that field and they'll do things to get that shut down. We've had like times where we don't play, and then, before you know it, it turns into like kind of like I don't know, like a shanty town.
Yeah.
And you have to try to like chase these people out who are all, getting high and everything else like that. And so, and
Ogden's finest. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So,
and let's talk a little bit about that field, because I think some of the new players watching this, and if you don't know where to go play, one of the fields that I really enjoy playing is the Ogden Marriott Slaterville field. It's called 12th Street. It's been called a lot of different names. The field behind the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever been called a shanty town, but you could definitely call it that, because there is a homeless population that likes to camp out from time to time.
Yeah, and if we don't play constantly, like, and I'm not advocating that you don't harass anybody there. We never do.
Yeah.
It's just the hard thing is that we have to clean up so much junk on that field. Like once it gets in, it just gets really hard to let it out. And ironically, I think that's actually helped us with law enforcement too, because law enforcement used to harass us as well. Because it's like, you're crossing the tracks and you're trespassing. It's like, we're walking across 30 feet of track, dude. Like, really, go bust somebody jaywalking.
Sure.
There's more validity there.
Yeah.
But I think what's happened is the law enforcement, and we've also worked a lot with the city as well, Marriott Slaterville. I think the law enforcement's kind of understood as like, hey, either I can mess with the airsofters and the paintballers, or I can mess with a bunch of, drug addicts and who knows what.
That makes sense.
And so they kind of, in the past few years have left us alone, where we're kind of getting harassed a lot. So it's been great there, knock on wood, nothing goes wrong.
I'm all about
it. But sorry. So
You're
definitely join Facebook, join Ogden Paintball. There's also Northern Wasatch Paintball Society on Facebook. We play every 2 weeks. If we get more people wanting to play, we can organize games weekly. We used to do that, but
I remember a good 25, 30 players coming out at times, and it was a good consistent, like, it was always maybe some of the same faces and hit or miss, some cousins, some brothers and whatever.
Sure.
But I really feel like it has tapered off a little bit. I think it's making a resurgence. Shout out to Spencer. I know he does some game organizing.
Definitely, yeah.
I know you do a lot of resources for them. You've got paint and air up here, and you're 10, 15 minutes away. You're not too far away.
Yeah, no.
And more often than not, you're probably over there if it's big enough, right?
Yeah.
You set up shop and do that out of your truck.
Yeah.
So
Legit. And I think that's kind of what's happened is, again, we had a brick and mortar Monster Paintball or Monster.
Yeah, I remember
paintball.
him. Bernie. Okay.
Yep.
I'll eventually reach out to you, Bernie, if you're listening right now.
Yeah.
We'll get you on.
And unfortunately that went out of biz. And so I think with the Ogden players, they kind of were left struggling. It's like, okay, where do we get air? Where do we get paint? Where do we just, and, it's kind of nice because, me reaching into the space, like filling up CO2 and things like that. I think the paintball community will, eventually be built back, because I'm getting calls like weekly on people who want to fill up, CO2 and just, it's just, I can convert them over to HPA.
Yeah.
Like, hey, go play over here. Have you heard about this spot? No, I haven't.
Nice.
Join this group, and we've had a couple of players, show up, and we kind of, what's nice with Spencer and Gustavo and Diego and Steven and a couple of others, if I apologize if I don't mention you, they've really kind of brought a lot of fire and passion into it, which is nice, because, for me, I have a lot of other hobbies. Like I'm a really avid motocrosser. And, if I have to choose between like begging people to come to the field or just throw my bike in the truck and go on the track, dude, it's the latter. Not even a second
you're
thought.
On the track before you know it.
Yeah. It's like, because it gets hard after like begging people to come play in the field.
It is hard.
But anyway, sorry. So that was a huge side tangent from
that's
that.
awesome.
But that's who I am as a paintball player.
Yeah.
And that's how I relate to Chad Smith. So now we're full circle.
Wow, full circle. So now we're diving back into Paradise Lost and the early founding of that. Right. So you were in college. You were recruiting people doing that.
Yeah. So I graduated from college and I moved back down to Ogden, and I was just finding places to play. I don't know when Ogden actually got found. I found Ogden Field on Google Maps, and I actually went back there with my friends and walked around. I was like, hey, this can be a field.
Yeah, we can do that.
And we started playing, and then, you know, we eventually ran into other people. So I don't know when it was actually like quote unquote discovered.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we kind of played a little bit more. As far as how a Paradise Lost happened, it was interesting. So I was grocery shopping. This was like in 2012. And I ran into an old buddy of mine from high school or grade school, actually.
Nice.
And we were Facebook friends, you know, but you don't really know anything about people, you know, on Facebook, you know, very, very little. So we started talking a little bit, and we were kind of both in the same places in our lives. We both got divorced, and there's a lot of parallels with our divorces when we were both just recently divorced, like within like 3 months. And so we were kind of in the same, you know, spot. And so we had like a good heart to heart and kind of like, you know, reconnected a little bit. And we started talking about paintball because, again, like you said, like, hey, man, you want to come play paintball? You want to come play paintball?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, yeah, my family owns this field, you know. There used to be an old paintball field there, you know, over in this land that we used to go ride on. Do you remember that area? And I was like, yeah, like I do. Like, yeah, let's go play. Let's go check it out. And I didn't know like any of like what had happened or anything else. I just knew that Velocity was there and then was gone.
Okay.
You know? And so again, this is like winter. So this is for who like a couple of people who are talking about playing in the winter. Mm-hmm. I'm one of those guys. I love playing in the rain. I love playing in the winter and snow. But anyway, so we go out there, like I think this is like in February or January. And there at that time was a pretty heavy year for snow. And I think there was like at least 6 inches of snow out there. Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of this barren field, you know, and there was these like cement bunkers and things like that. Nice. And there was like this castle. And I was just kind of like, what is this?
You're like, this isn't normal. There's a castle out here.
Yeah. and like, he was like, well, what it is, you know, there's this Ren Fair and they kind of do like Renaissance Fair, excuse me. They kind of do these things yearly and yada, yada, yada. And so we kind of talked a little bit about it. We walked around the field and I used to ride out of this field, like my dirt bike. And so we kind of like walked around and kind of like reassociated myself with the field. And it's about, 44 acres, I think, or 40-ish acres. Nice. I don't remember. It was a lot.
Good spread.
Yeah, a big chunk of land. And so essentially, you know, we kind of walked around and I kind of talked to him about it. And I was like, wait, what happened? And he kind of caught me up on the history of the field and kind of what went down. I mean, again, he didn't really know much because he was the grandson of, you know, the family that owned this, you know, this land. And so, you know, I kind of was like, there's something here, you know? Yeah. And again, like I related to Chad Smith at that time because like, hey, golden opportunity. Right. Here's a way to get paintball like going legit. Yeah. And so in my mind, what was really beneficial to it is like, okay, here's a Ren Fair. They build all these like, you know, props, you know, for them. In my mind, they're bunkers, you know? And so it's like, okay, I can build bunkers and I can make them look like props. Yeah. Just as easy as anybody else. We can go ahead and we can actually make these like, you know, durable to where they can be shot with paint, you know, just wash them off and they can be whatever, a castle or fort or a little fairy house or whatever, you know, whatever. And so,
whatever you guys want,
whatever you guys want. Yeah. We'll facilitate. So I went and talked to the owners of the land. I was like, hey, you know, tell me more about what happened and you know what your guys' thoughts are if I did this. And you know, at first they're like, no, we're not interested, and that's where I talked about the business model with them. I was like, look, I think Velocity screwed up because they had like a constant presence on the field and they're constantly trying to get players to come out. I don't think, frankly, and this can be a conversation that we've had before about the paintball community and how to grow it and what can spoil the growth thereof. And
I got a cough too.
Sure. Sorry.
Hold on. No, you're good.
So,
these are sanitized. If you're on next week,
COVID,
they are sanitized.
We are socially distanced.
Yeah, we're close.
Yeah,
we're 6
feet. So, anyways,
so they had a bad. They initially say no, and you tell them about Velocity. You're like, hold on. Do they know Velocity? They didn't know Velocity, or
no. These were the people who were associated and worked with Velocity before.
Okay.
So these guys
That's where
had
I
intimate
missed.
knowledge. Yeah,
I'm glad
these
we
guys,
make that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're good.
These guys had intimate knowledge of it.
Okay.
And this is and that's where I told them, this is where I think their business plan fell.
So they are been there, done that type of conversation.
Yeah.
Now you're flipping it and you're saying, hey, look at this angle. Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm like, look, this is just, I think you called it a drop ship model essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Is you just come in, you organize a big scenario game one weekend, let's say 2 weekends a year.
Yeah.
And that's it. We're out. And you don't see us again.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, that sounds great. So they're like, but you need to talk with the Ren Fair because the Ren Fair holds these events and everything else. So it's like, okay, that's fine.
What's their agreement with the Ren Fair? Do they have a soft spot for?
We'll get into that.
Okay.
Yeah, that was fun. So essentially, let me tell the story about the Ren Fair. So I meet with the Ren Fair. The organizers there, and they're great. There was a couple of things that we disagreed on, but ultimately they saw kind of the same vision that we did. It's like, okay, look, we can come in, we can build bunkers, you can make them props, we can go ahead and make them durable, we can like stucco them with cement or whatever else, you guys can paint them and everything else. We can kind of help each other out, and this is like the best business relationship ever.
Yeah.
And so they agreed, and they're all super excited. So then we went ahead and get on. Now, why the Ren Fair got out there is really interesting. And this kind of goes into what we talked a little bit about before with the podcast with Alan. And this is kind of where I'd love to compare notes. Alan talked a lot about the green space. I refer to it as green belt. And the reason why that's critical is that's zoning for the land and for the tax value, that you get charged every year. Now, to my understanding, what I was told, and I could be wrong, but from what I was told from the owners themselves, is that the land originally was greenbelt, right? Agricultural. So the tax rate on this land for these 40 acres is like $400 a year or whatever it was. It was 3-digit money.
Yeah.
Not a lot. Then you had Velocity come in, start the business, everything else. Well, now you're running a business on agricultural land. And so the way that the city or the county or whoever sees it, it's no longer agricultural.
Right.
And I don't know if they put it in commercial or whatever else, but whatever they did, they put it into they took it out of greenbelt, and then you have 3-digit money turned into 5-digit money like that.
Ooh.
And so now you have this family, retired, medical bills, everything else, fixed income, that now have, best case scenario, $10,000 that they owe, and pay up in 2 months.
Dang.
And so it was a really, I think that caused a really bad situation.
Yeah, that's a bad taste.
Yeah.
Especially to dip your toes back into it. It's like, ooh.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, you have all the red tape already cut. You're like, yeah, this is ready to go.
Yeah.
All the hard work's been done. Let's pay this deficit and then figure it out. That's crazy.
Right.
So I can definitely see the perspective being a little bit jaded. It's like, oh, hold on a second.
Yeah. So and when Alan talked about how they got it in the green space, sure, but whatever it did, it didn't remain there. And so I think that's what kind of helped contribute to the failure of the biz. And so what ended up happening is the Ren Fair came in, and they were like, hey, we can pay a percentage and everything else. So the owners were like, okay, fine. And so that kind of helped pay that cost. But and I didn't really know until I was pretty deep in that the owners really just wanted to get it back in the green belt so they can get everybody off the land and just pay however much it was. And so it kind of created the ultimate reason why Paradise Lost failed was because there was just really 3 different objectives. So I want to do the scenario games, just come in, throw an awesome event, jump out. The Ren Fair wanted to kind of really, what's the word that would be the proper term? What is that legal term when, like, I guess homestead in? Would be the best term.
Squat,
yeah, squat. I guess would be the best way to phrase it.
I almost, before you said that, I was like, colonize it, or like turn it into a midsummer retreat.
Pretty much
midsummer.
Like and it was and then you had the owners who wanted everybody off the land.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you had all these competing objectives, and so it really kind of made it hard. And so for the first year, like our plan was like, okay, let's go ahead and just kind of remove a lot of the junk that's on the land, and let's get this safe. And, cause that was a big thing. It still is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
I want players to be safe. I don't want them to step on like some pallet and
you had
the
that
wood
guy
break
with glass and
Logan.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone getting hurt.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone getting hurt. And so that was a nightmare. Because again, you had Velocity fell. They're out for a couple of years. You had the Ren Fair come in, and you know, I don't want to say anything too critical, but I think the one thing I can say fairly about the Ren Fair was their project management was really, really poor. And that's not to like, and in fairness to the Ren Fair, you have to understand this is not a not-for-profit organization.
Yeah,
you know, they're just doing it for their own passion.
Fun.
Right.
Dive in.
Yeah. And they're kind of like the paintballers of Ren Fairs. I even though I can say that, I analytically understand it. Emotionally, I don't. But
I got you.
Yeah. So anyway, so what ends up happening is are we good?
Yeah, you're good. Keep
okay.
Going.
So what ends up happening is like you have people who are associated with the Ren Fair who are passionate about it.
Okay.
That, you know, are not really the administrators, but just people who are volunteering. And you know, running a field, you're not going to turn down free help, right? But, and I don't think this is a problem so much in paintball, but at least with Ren Fair, the quality of that help is really, oh man,
suspect.
It's
like hold on, I might be better off without you guys.
Serious. Like you Simpsons, right?
Yeah.
Like you're the character comic book guy.
Yeah.
Okay, imagine like 20 comic book guys, and that's what you got. It's like, I know, let's build a castle, like legit. Like they like grab stone and they start piling stone.
Dang.
And you know, you're like, okay, like there's so many thoughts that go through your head. It's like, okay, you're on a floodplain, you have no foundation, you have no motor, you have no skills, you literally don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. And
like, but hey, you're building a castle.
You have workforce is what you had.
Yeah, workforce. And you know, people are like, we're going to build a castle. And then like the funny thing that happened all the time was it got hard. Yeah. It's like, oh, this is hard. And then you get hard after 20 minutes. And then that was it. Project's done. You know, so here I come into this and like here's all these projects that were like started and aborted, you know, like right away. So I have a stage that someone brought out, you know, that was flooded and rotted, and now it has like nails and everything that I have to now dismantle and cut apart and take away because I don't want to. Like, as if I was a paintball player, it's like, hey, I can like run through this bush, and here's this nice solid wood platform I can run across and sprint, and I can, you know, do better timing. My footing's a lot more sure. Yeah. Until he actually like looks at it and is like, no, this is all rotted, and there's a bunch of nails and screws everywhere. And that was like a 30 by 40 foot stage that I had to dismantle, you know? Yeah. And so it was just. So now you have Renaissance building these little projects around and doing these little satellite projects all over this land. Over.
Now you come in.
This is for years that were going on, and they were just aborted. So now I come in.
With help on your side or just you?
Well, so yeah, then that's another thing that you have to understand, like for you and for anybody who's like promoting an event, like, you know, for me, I relied a lot more on just, you know, the grace and goodwill of my friends. You know, I couldn't pay them. You know, I'm sure it's probably the same for you. Like,
it is the same. Yeah.
It's really, really hard to like, I mean, for me, I didn't have to talk my friends too hard into it, and they were really great. Yeah. But it was kind of hard to ask them like to come out and keep doing this. So it was me and at most 4 other guys, maybe sometimes 5, but mainly there were 3 guys, and there was a 4th guy that would help out occasionally. But yeah, it was just like, you know, worked 9 to 5 job, you know, and then head straight to the field and work till night, sometimes way later if we could get light or something else like that, you know, and then again go back to the 9 to 5 job again and do the same thing all over again, just week after week after week. And so, I mean, we had to clean up all sorts of stuff, and like it was hard because there were so many like aborted projects that we didn't know until we actually would walk the field. Like I remember one time we walked up on a what we thought was a body.
Okay, if the FBI wasn't listening, they are now. They're like, hold on a second.
YouTube's like totally strict. They're like, demonetized. But no, it was a naked mannequin, and there were naked mannequins out throughout the entire field because what had happened is the Ren Fair decided to do a spook alley. Yeah, and then they didn't get their mannequins, and so these mannequins. Then there was a flood that happened like later on in the spring. And so here's all these like naked mannequins. We actually made that part of a game, like an objective. If you find a naked mannequin, like bring it to the headquarters. Like,
This is crazy, man. So this is like such an X factor to me because now that I've ran games and worked with a blank slate and used some property before, dude, I could only imagine up at Red Creek just finding like trinkets, you know what I mean? Just like all this stuff. This is so unique that I don't think many fields run into,
this
man.
Is so weird. Because and that was a hard thing too, because like I would see someone's like, that's just trash, throw it away, and the Ren Fair would be like, no, that's important. Like, I remember walking up on one like little cove, and there's all these dream catchers and like little like fairies, like and gnomes and things like that someone just left out there. And I'm like, throw this away. And they're no, this is somebody else's thing, and this is like their little gimmick. I was like, then why is it still here? It's like it was here the whole winter. They obviously don't care.
Sure. So that one interesting question pops into my mind, especially on the field side of things, right? So the Renaissance Fair, Ren Fair, to me is a circus. You know what I mean? Like pop up, you're there for a little bit, and then you're gone.
No,
not the case, huh? No. So a lot of these things are just left around. It's like a wasteland.
Yeah, sadly, and that was kind of the thing. It was kind of sad, and that was one thing that the owners were very vocal with both the Ren Fair and with myself how frustrated they were.
Yeah.
Because, and again, I'm not trying to like, I'm just trying to tell the history of the field. I'm trying to be as fair as I can. And I'm saying things that are just everyone knew and everyone can acknowledge. And so the Ren Fair in of itself was also a challenge, just in the sense that it wasn't just like a weekend event. This thing went on for 3 weeks.
Okay.
So like
festival.
Full on. And another challenge is that you had people, again, not necessarily associated with the Ren Fair, like the administrators, but people who worked with it that in my mind were just really frankly taking advantage of the owners.
Yeah.
And so like, I remember in March, like people would roll in with trailers and start camping out.
Dang.
The Ren Fair's not till May.
Yeah.
And it's just like, who are you?
Why
are you here?
Yeah.
What and they're like, well, we're here to support the Ren Fair, in the Simpsons comic book guy voice, so we're here to do this, and it's just like, why you're not doing anything? I'm working on the field. I'm cleaning up all the, naked mannequin bodies. I don't see you doing anything besides sitting by the campfire, like eating Twinkies, dude. Like, it was hard because there was like a lot of them out there.
That's difficult. You don't have a blank slate. You are working. You're trading some political clout a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You are playing some influence to where a couple different parties. It's not directional.
No.
It's multi.
Yeah, and it got really hard because another thing that was really difficult for us is, and I think we kind of ended up planting kind of a toxic seed, and we didn't mean to, and it wasn't nefarious or malicious.
Sure.
But I mean, when you had the owners kind of going to, the Ren Fair is like, hey, we want this done, we want this done, we want this done, and they've been asking for it for years, and it would always get put off. And then they come to me and like, hey, can you do this? It's like, yeah, give me 2 days,
Nice.
And then just do it with 4 guys. It's like, yeah, it's done. You want it, like, jump in the truck, we'll drive around, we'll go see it.
Yeah, we'll get something done.
Yeah. And they're like, and the owners were always like very like expressed like a lot of appreciation to that. It's like, it's so nice to ask you guys to do something and you guys just do it. And it gets done quick and fast and proper.
That's good.
And you guys can do more with 3 or 4 guys in a day than 30 of these people.
The small army of Renaissance. Yeah.
Right. And again, I think it just kind of came to different priorities. And it's hard because, again, I don't want to be like too critical, but I can go back to that. I can fairly say like the problem with the Ren Fair was project management. They just did not have anybody kind of like challenging. Like whenever anybody had an idea, no one came in and be like, hey, that's a stupid idea and here's why. Yeah. They're just like, no, roll with it. Go.
So then the person who approaches the landowner and negotiates, hey, I want to have a Ren Fair here. Who is that person? Was there one entity?
Yeah.
One person?
Yeah.
Okay. So were they just not the leadership role of like, hey, let's play within these guidelines? Or it was just like, here you go, here's the keys, let's get it. You know what I mean? Let's go after it.
Kind of more of the latter. And again, this is like someone who's really passionate, and I think just the thing is that, I don't know, I guess just different philosophies in life. I don't know.
Okay.
For me, where I'm an avid paintballer. It's like, hey, the field needs to be safe. It needs to be cleaned up. I can't have players getting hurt, so we have to get all this crap out of the way. And what's all this stuff? And I also know paintballers. And you know, you put a paintball gun in the hands of a 14-year-old kid who can't think past 3 minutes, you know, for himself, regardless of anybody else.
Yeah.
It's like all this stuff's going to get shot to hell.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm trying to like help them out and just like, can we cover this up? Can we hide this? You know, but it was just really challenging in the sense that like,
yeah,
you know, I remember there was a camper that someone just left there, you know, like legit, like, you know, there were actually 2 campers and I was like, whose campers are these? Like, oh, we don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these campers have been here all year. Like they stayed through the winter.
Yeah.
Like,
that's crazy.
Cool. That's cool with
yeah.
you. You know, and they're like, oh, we think it's some girls. It's like, is she still inside? Is she dead? Like, what happened?
Gypsy town, man.
Yeah.
I have my own little gypsy town up at Red Creek. I try to get all the campers I can to sleep people in our little camping area. But that's for a different purpose. This is like, a slap on the hand. Like, I think there's just no respect for the land that you have.
Right.
You know what I mean? Maybe there's not enough accountability there to whoever. And it's just crazy.
And it was hard because it put the owners in a really difficult position because they were really, really frustrated with a lot of the things that were going on. But they were also on the hook for the tax rate. And so they were like kind of like they were stuck. They just didn't want to deal with it, but they were stuck dealing with it.
Gotcha.
And so I apologize to everyone who went out to the first event. It was going to be cool. I mean, later on it was going to be cool, but it just was so challenging. And then, you know, again, first time.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the things that we talked about with your field, like, you know, and Jordan's field is an awesome field. Like, I do agree it's like the best field in Utah.
Appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have done so much work into it, and it shows. And you know, maybe some other people don't see it because it's like, oh yeah, they did this and this, and like me doing it, it's like, no, there's a lot of work that goes into this.
Yeah, yeah.
I can tell. Like you spent, I'm willing to guess probably at least 200 hours.
I'd say that. And once you even factor in commute, not even in those hours, like when you told me that you just said something like, oh, I work 9 to 5 and then I'm on the field till 4 or 5 hours after and sometimes later. And I'm like, man, I would salivate over an opportunity just to hit something during the week.
Right.
Like I would accomplish so much. I've got big dreams, big aspirations for that field, but I'm limited to how many times I can get out there to improve that.
Right.
So,
right. And that's a huge logistical factor. And, you know, one of the things that was really interesting for us is we had the island, and again, you can go back to that Google image.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't play the island due to insurance because there's no egress, and it's more of a peninsula than anything else. So we actually had to build a bridge. Now I know Velocity had a bridge, and I wish, you know, maybe I can get something from Alan if he can send me some pictures because I've heard stories of it.
Okay.
I guess what they did is they kind of built like a little pontoon bridge with like, you know, those blue water. Tubs or whatever.
So I can picture it.
They were out there still when I was out there. Like I had to try to figure out some way to get rid of those or utilize them. But so they kind of built this pontoon bridge. I don't know if it ever ended up working. It was gone by the time I got there. So what we were going to do is we're kind of going to do the same thing. We're going to build a pontoon bridge. They had some the owners had some old Air Force like fuel tanks, you know, for jets.
Okay.
I don't know how they got them, but I was like, hey, we can use those. And then we looked at them closer and they were like, no, these aren't watertight, unfortunately. Like, there's no way we can use these. Yeah. And so we were going to build a land bridge. And so we spent a lot of time like prepping for that. And then, you know, the owners were like, hey, you know, we don't want to mess with it. These waterfowls, yada, yada, yada. Okay. We don't want to run into any problems. Can you build a temporary, you know, structure? Yeah. It's like, okay. So, you know, here we are back again, 2 months gone. Yeah. You know,
that's crazy.
And now I only got like 2 weeks to go. Ren Fair takes over the field. I get like maybe a week to clean up and then Paradise Lost. And so we again, redneck engineering, we got some tractor tires and we got some wire spools and we like put the tractor tires and laid them down like, you know, on top of one another and used wire spools and used them kind of like axles. Okay. And we like laid them across the river or the water. Yeah. And then we built, you know, planks to each one. So you've now had this land bridge, you know, that you can go across. And this was just like, And that's kind of the fun thing about if you decide to get into it. I'm sure you can speak to this. Like you get presented with challenges all the time, and you know necessity is definitely, you know, the mother of innovation. It's just like, crap, how are we going to do this? And you start thinking about things that you wouldn't think about. Right. And it's actually kind of fun, you know, in the entrepreneurial sense of that problem solving. It's horrible when you're in it.
Horrible when you're in it, and there's a timeline that's ticking, and
Yep.
it's like, oh man.
And there's no money, and there's just
Yeah,
like,
you're
okay,
right.
what are you gonna do?
That's so true.
Yeah, it's like I have what's available to me. Like, figure it out, you know,
Yeah.
and that's it. So anyways, where was I? Oh, so
You build the bridge.
we build a bridge, you know, all that other fun stuff. The hard thing was, is again, we had to just jump straight in, you
Mhm.
know. We needed to show that the business model had viability to the owners, and
This is the course of, give me a time period here. You say
6
go.
months.
Really?
6 months.
Dang. that's pretty quick.
Yeah,
That's
from
pretty
like
quick.
January to July or June.
And you probably put a ton of hours in there,
Ton of hours.
being so accessible. So
Yeah.
everything leads up to this moment. You're planning, you get the bridge done, everything's coming together.
Right.
So first game.
And it was rough. And you know, shout out to a lot of people who helped me. You know, Bernie Brinkhurst was a huge help.
Nice.
You know,
I know Bernie.
Colton Kidd was a huge help as well.
Colton.
I feel bad because Colton was like, yeah, I can help out, and then he became the head ref, and I didn't really even ask him to. He just did, you know, just out of the goodness of his heart.
Shout out Colton.
Yeah,
Shout
Colton
out Mike,
Bernie.
my guy who does some work for us too. That's
Yeah,
awesome, man.
yeah.
But people
And-
fall into that role, right? Because they
Yeah.
believe the whole thing. They see the whole dream. They're
Yeah.
out there, blood, sweat, tears.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me more. You're gonna name more people.
Well, yeah, Dan Saunders. So, you know, I remember I had my full freak out mode.
Mhm.
You know, I had a compressor, you know, I bought it from Colton Kidd, and, you know, it was the old peg leg setup. And, you know, it was at home charging these tanks, and my dad calls me. He's like, hey, it's not building pressure. It's topping out at 2,500 PSI.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, this is like 9 o'clock before the game's like less than 12 hours.
Holy
you know?
smokes.
And I'm freaking out, you know. And I
Yeah.
remember like getting on Facebook and sending an IM to, you know, an SOS to Dan. I was like, dude, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I need you to come up and save my ass.
Yeah.
You know, because I had like, I think I was close to 100 players, and I was like, I have
Wow.
no
And Dan
nowhere.
sees the message and says, delete. I'm better off. I'm
Yeah,
just kidding.
serious.
Dan is not like that.
No.
Dan, I hope you answer my message back and get you on the show. Dan's a great guy. He's helped me out a ton
Great, yeah.
in building this. But that's funny.
Yeah.
You know, has his hand in some help. And
Yeah. No,
That's cool.
and he was really helpful. You know, and afterwards, you know, there's people like Derek Jones who helped out.
Mhm.
You know,
Shout out Derek.
yeah, shout out to Derek Jones, and you know, a couple of others who, you know, kind of just helped kind of smooth over, you know, a lot of the failings that we had. You know? Because again, we were all fully volunteer. You know,
Yep.
most of my guys that are helping me aren't paintballers. You know, they're people I'm dragging to the field. They're
Yeah.
just kind of just doing this because they enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, like we had a couple of issues on the field. Unfortunately, we had a ref who started the field on fire.
Oh no.
That
During
was-
a game?
During a game.
Oh shit.
That was,
The worst case scenario.
this is like I don't remember when it was. It was June, July. It was summer,
Yeah.
and it was already like a bad year for fire.
And
And he was in this little cove of like, you know, like what I talked about before with the dream catchers and little gnomes and
fair enough.
Barbies, naked Barbies or whatever. And there's like one of these big logs that people would use to kind of like sit on. It was one of those logs that you see that don't have like any bark on it, like all the bark stripped
Yeah.
off.
Okay.
And you know, it was a big log, and it had probably been sitting there for a decade, you know. And so those cracks, you know, kind of develop in those logs. And this kid, you know, put his cigarette butt out in the crack of that log, you know, which is, you know, I don't know if he didn't realize this, but that's an excellent way to start a fire. You know, that's an excellent way.
He became a prepper. He was
Yeah.
before his
I mean,
time.
dude. Yeah,
Discovered fire.
survivalist. He discovered fire by cramming a hot.
So is this
cigarette.
this isn't game day one, right?
I'm
This
sorry?
this isn't day one, right?
No, this is day one.
The first game,
First game.
this happens.
The first game.
So
this
Dan
happened.
bails you out on air. Does he
Yeah.
bring his own setup?
Yeah, he brought his
Okay.
own setup, and then what happened is one of Bernie Brinkhurst's guys, I wish I could remember his name, looked at the compressor, you know, that I have, and what happened was there's a little unit. It's basically for like I think it's called a desiccator. So basically, there's kind of this like little desiccating strip that's, you know, in a little glass, you know, viewing glass, and basically
Okay.
that is an indicator to you that your filters are used up because it, you know, desiccates the water out of the air, you know, because you're compressing it, you know,
Yeah.
at such a high pressure. And so essentially what happened is that little manifold is cracked. And it was just a little feather line crack, but at that pressure, it's enough to leak through. And so anyways, like, you know, I'm at the, I mean, I am running all over. I was up at like 4 a.m, just trying to get things done, you know, running back to West Haven and out to Marriott Slaterville. I am just like a chicken with my head cut off, just trying to get everything done morning of.
Yeah.
I have players showing up. I have all these things going on, you know, and I am just running ragged, you know. And but luckily, he's able to fix it. You know, just took out that whole unit that really wasn't necessary. It's just kind of more of a status indicator. And so we were able to go ahead and get started. I remember, and that was another thing I discovered is my compressor. It's awesome if you have access to power. Yeah. You know, the 50 amp breaker with 220. Outside of that, because I remember when you were asking about it, like initially, like you made this, you kind of said the same thing. You had the same thought that I did. I was like, you need a generator to run this, and you're like, oh, I got like a 4,500.
Yeah, I got a sweet generator. I spent like $1,200 on.
Yeah.
You're like, not good enough,
not
bro.
good enough, no. And that's kind of where I was.
Military grade.
Yeah, I was like, well, my dad has a generator, and I went to my dad. He's like, no, man, like you got to go rent an industrial, like a 45 kilowatt generator that they use on construction sites to get this thing started. And you have to ramp it up and almost redline it to energize the coils to even get it started, you know.
That is such, I'll tangent for a sec and say that this air is the roadblock. I remember having early conversations with Dan when Red Creek wasn't Red Creek. It was actually Frontline XP. That's a different story. But the Dan was like, air is always the issue. It's always the issue. Air is always the issue. And it is. It's a huge roadblock. We're dealing with industrial grade pressure that not many other hobbies deal with. No. This is big stuff. You know what I mean? Scuba, fortunately, they deal with it to a certain level, and they go to a 3K. They don't need to deal with anything further than that. They've got what they need.
And then when you ask any scuba shop, hey, can you go up to 45? They usually give you like grief. Like I heard some people will charge you like ridiculous amounts of money to be like, well, I got to turn on the compressor now. It's like, dude, you got to run your compressor for like 30 seconds. Yeah.
And if we had the scuba enthusiast, which we'll never, the scuba enthusiast that actually loves paintball as much as we do, then we've got someone to do that. But that's such a rare piece. Like scuba is very an immersive hobby and everything. And I think once you scuba, all you do is scuba. You know what I mean? But I mean, no fault against them. I think they provide for their hobby, and we're lucky to piggyback off of it in most cases. So. But that is the air tangent. What I was getting at is that is a huge roadblock in planning. And it usually kind of stops fields before they even begin because that's as far as you get.
It's a huge, kind of like what you're talking about. It's a huge investment, you know. And that was kind of my stepping off point, because I had an opportunity to buy this, you know, compressor setup. And I remember thinking like, hey, like, here's the moment, you know, like, do I buy this or do I not? Because, you know, like and that was like the stepping off point to me, is like, okay, I guess. And again, I didn't have like, this was an opportunity that presented itself to me. I didn't have, you know, like money saved up just looking for an investment or anything else like that. I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll go to the bank and get a loan, you know, and that's it. And so that's another thing I think a lot of people, maybe they understand better now, but I don't think there's some people out there that still kind of think like, you know, after you throw an event, you go home and you just like distribute the Benjamins, you know. It's like, you know, 100 for you, 200 for me,
throw it through the cash counter, because there's just too much to count by hand. You just gotta no.
This is like, let's just stack it in, like, oh, I can, you know, fluff up my pillow with all the hundreds. No, like for me, I was just like, okay, you know, thank you team for helping out today. We'll go and buy a Little Caesars pizza, you know, on me, on my line of credit.
I'm paying you in the memories that you made out here, because you'll never forget them, and it'll be the best of your life. Yeah. Okay, we just had a little bit of camera difficulties there, as you are well aware. If you've made it to minute number 46, congratulations.
There's 40 more minutes to go of problems.
I hope you're enjoying these podcasts, because one thing I talked to Brody, and I was just like, you know what? If we talk, we talk, man. This is paintball, and I think the details of paintball is so exciting. And I think you're having these conversations probably in your head all the way through your work week. Maybe you don't have a buddy at work to talk and geek out about paintball. Here's that opportunity to kind of live and breathe it a little bit. We get to talk about Paradise Lost. We get to talk about kind of the future and kind of what we assume and what we can do and what our capabilities are in Utah. So I think Yeah, if you've made it to minute number 47, thank you.
Yeah,
Brody still has some more to give us, and I'm excited to see where this goes because we got a couple more topics to hit too.
Right.
But we were just talking about your field ref made a decision to become a survivalist in the middle of your game and said,
the game started
fire.
Yep.
I give you fire.
Yep. so
this is day one. Air compressor goes down. Fire starts onto the field. Yeah. You have 100 players show up, huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome. What were you charging? I'm curious. What are you charging admission?
I don't remember. I think it was like, well, that was another challenge too. Because it was actually a variable rate. Because what ended up happening is like, it was like, I don't remember how soon it was, but I wasn't having players sign up.
Oh.
And I was freaking out.
Yeah.
Because like nobody was, and it was kind of like this like domino thing. I was like, well, I'll only go if he goes, and and just kind of weird. And I couldn't get anyone to really commit because like one of the things that Bernie told me is like, no one knows who you are, man. Like everyone kind of thinks that you're just a scammer. and Bernie's like, that's not the case, but nobody knows who you are. So everyone's kind of like, what's he going to do? Is this just going to be a bait and switch, and he's just going to run off? Yeah. So I had to create this incentive to where like, I like basically for any player that would sign up, at first, like whoever signed up first got in free. And whoever signed up second would only have to pay like $1. Whoever signed up third had to pay $2. And so I think it capped out like $15 or $20 or whatever else. But that created this incentive for everyone to be like, oh, I want to play now, so everyone jumped in. I don't remember how it's structured exactly. I remember having to explain it like several times on Facebook because, like other people like tried to buy like 20 tickets for like $1. And it's like, no, it goes up with every ticket. Like that's how it works.
So admittedly, like that does not seem very straightforward.
Yeah.
But what I've kind of found out too is like the simpler it is, the better. You know what I mean? Because for me, like I was like, oh, I'm going to have my own paintball business. Like I'm excited to offer like a buy one, get one, a bounce back. Like I had all these crazy ideas in my original business plan. I'm like, no, we're going to do this easy. Yeah. Like, give me $20, you're in, dude.
Yeah.
Come party, But that's interesting. But that's the same mindset when you're like, I haven't ran one yet. I want to get people through my doors. Here's my take on this. And it's a little bit different from Velocity. It's a little different from who's become before. Yeah. You explain it a few times and you show up and you get 100 or so. That's a great showing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, it was a great showing. It created a lot of challenges just in and of itself. Cause again, we were discussing, I remember just earlier kind of like, hey, do we cap players and do we just kind of do like a quote unquote dry run or whatever, and, again, the problem was its timings, feasibility of the business model, all these other factors and obligations were in play that I had to kind of like talk to and speak to. And so it was just like, hey, like, I guess we just go into the breach, Yeah. And, so we went ahead and did that. There were challenges, and again, I apologize for anyone who had a like really bad time. I felt really bad because we had a couple of teams show up. We had Desert Edge, with Dan. Yeah. And then we had I don't know if they're around anymore. Field of Paint. Have you seen those
Field
guys?
of Paint, they are still around.
They're still around.
Ryan Smith, I think, leads the charge. I could be wrong there. I've met Ryan. We've played. Derek Jones pulls them up every year for Fast Eddies and stuff up there. So they are still around. They come out to fill the screams and stuff. Yeah. I think they're
not as prevalent as they used to be.
They hit that transformation where it's like, I'll play once or twice a year.
Sure. So one of the funny dynamics is balancing teams. That's always a challenge, especially when you don't know the skill set and when you have teams show up. Yeah. And so, Dan brought his whole crew. I shouldn't say whole crew. He brought a significant portion of his crew up. Yeah. And then, you had Field of Paint show up. And I don't know who it was. I don't remember. I don't think it was Ryan, but there are other people with Field of Paint that wanted to play with Desert Edge on the same team. We're like, no. And they're like, but we always play with them. It's like, you guys are playing against a bunch of like, not unincorporated or not corporated players. Right. Like, it's going to be a massacre,
And also, let's understand, we're playing in a Ren Fair remnants of this. Like, let's have some scenario fun, Sure. And I think from the producer standpoint, it's like you always want to make sure that, things are balanced. Yeah, so that's weird. Yeah. It sucks that we have some perspectives to challenge, but other than that, did you split them? We ended
up splitting them. I remember it being some people were pretty mad about it. Yeah. And it was just like, I don't care. At this point, I was like, I don't care, dude. Like,
you're like, I got air. You should be happy you have 3K in your tank. Let's go.
Yeah. So
what'd you do for paint? Out of curiosity?
Bernie provided it.
Nice.
So he was starting up his business, so he used it as a promo for his,
Cool.
and so yeah, he helped out a ton, and shout out to Bernie.
Yeah.
He was really helpful in that regard, and really gave a lot of really good advice. Let's see. So yeah, we had that, and it was another thing that was hard with the field is where it has that water feature, and it's so asymmetrical, or whatever, non-symmetrical, asymmetrical. It was really hard to try to figure out where to put everything and kind of balance the field, because again, like if you start out on the water side, and you rushed, you can get pretty far in the field, before the other team could.
Yeah,
you had the field captured because you had pretty much straight lines. However, if you just hesitated and you were really slow, like you were done, like that was it, like and that's unfortunately what happened, and I kind of got a I have like very high what's the word, I tip my hat to Desert Edge because they slaughtered everybody. I mean, they took the whole team back to the spawn point, where they were just walking out of spawns, and Desert Edge just had them just there. But I had to go there and be like, hey, you guys gotta pull back, and I was trying everything I could to help out the other team, and I'd go and be like, hey, like when the spawn starts, there's nobody over there, you gotta run, you gotta get over there like right now. If you can get to this bunker, you can hold and you can reinforce and you can do everything. Right, timer goes off, they all just kind of meander over there. I'm like, well, they're dead.
How did you run it? Because I think unique for us, we have sessions, spurts and sessions, right? We come on and off, reload, re-air. Did you do an ongoing theme where it was a long block?
I think we did a morning game, an afternoon game, and then a final game, if I remember right. So yeah, that's
hour, 2 hours, 3 hours at a time.
No, I really don't remember. Okay. I really don't remember. All I really remember is I remember actually like gearing up for the last game. That's another thing, a very strange paradox. If you run a field, guess how often you get to play paintball? 0. None. You don't play paintball. It's like building that field. I didn't play paintball at all that year. Probably that one game. But what was I gonna say? There was something else I was going to
final
about.
Battle. You go into final battle.
Oh yeah, the only memory I have is just really like jumping into the swamp with the tote, filling it up with water, and then running to the fire. That's
jeez.
That's the only real memory.
You got it out? Was it just a log?
It was just a log. Good. Thankfully, it didn't catch the field on fire. That was a fun conversation I had with the owners. So yeah, that happened. But
these owners are getting beat up, man.
Oh yeah,
they were getting left and right. They're like, what do we do?
Yeah, really, I felt bad.
But it sounded like you were definitely a positive influence. Like you were saying, you're like, we got stuff done when we said we were gonna get it done. Yeah, that's good.
So I mean, afterwards the game's over, and again, it was a first time run, and this is where I really appreciate Derek Jones because I didn't know because I went on like social media hiatus. I was just like, I already know.
You disappeared. Like, I don't want to see anything.
I already know what's coming. And so, Derek Jones, he reached out to me, and because he wanted to do some MWPL, and he was also, he told me about like some of the conversations. Like, a lot of people were kind of critical, and me and a couple of others have come in and kind of told him like, shut up. Like, you don't know how hard this is, and that's something I always appreciate with Derek. For doing that because it is hard, it's really a labor of love. This is not something that's like for if you make a profit, great, sure, that's awesome, but there are so many other ways to make money that are so much smarter than this. And so so anyways, we had the first day, we ended up and then we kind of ran into a problem with the Ren Fair, because the Ren Fair, and I don't know how. And we communicated it. We had it in our explicit contracts, everything else, that we were going to play the whole field. Yeah. But somehow, in the administration of Ren Fair's minds, we were only going to play the island. And it was like, why would we do that? Why would we clean up the whole field if we're only going to play the island? That doesn't make sense. Yeah. So they were really mad because now their castles are all shot up, Yeah. And we did our best to protect them, and this isn't, I'll own it, they got shot up, and maybe I didn't communicate as well as I should have. Sure. And we did try to protect it. We did tell players, hey, please don't shoot these, try to stay away from these bunkers, those bunkers, and this is, and you can call me a cop out or whatever else for this next part, but you have to understand these bunkers, these castles and everything else. These were things that were left out for years. just plywood.
Yeah.
No sealing, nothing.
Yeah.
Like paint sealing or chemical sealing. So like legit, like a lot of the reason why we told the paintballers to stay away from it is because they were pretty much ready to fall over.
Yeah.
Like I'm not kidding, dude. Like you could take your pinky and you could poke a hole through the wood.
That's crazy.
It was so rotted. The only thing that was holding it together was like the latex paint, and it was like the layers of latex paint. And so, we came out, the next day to clean up the field like we were going to. And, they were there and they were like, really mad, because they're like, you shut up, this and you shut up that. I was like, well, we're here to clean it up. Like, this is what we're here to do.
It wasn't oil-based paint, was it?
No,
okay.
No, it was just normal paintball paint.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I don't understand what the problem is. And the problem was like, again, these things were so rotted that, you had your brush with the water, and you try to brush it and the paint of like the Ren Fair paint would come off, like slather off because there's nothing to bond to anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we got in bad with the Ren Fair. And I don't know how we couldn't. I mean, we really did try to communicate exactly what we're going to do. But maybe they.
It's funny because lost. I think I try to picture myself a Ren Fairian. Yeah. If that's a thing.
Sure.
And I try to say, okay, we're joint operation with paintball. My first thing, and I think the public generally does this, that's messy. It's going to be messy. Yeah. So I think that's almost addressed early where it's like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to clean it up. It's oil-based or it's not oil-based.
Right. Yeah.
And that's weird that after the fact that, there's a big uproar. So now you're picking up the pieces with the relationship with Ren Fair.
Yeah.
How do you make that exit there? Is the deal off or what's going on?
Well, it just kind of the problem is again, I don't really remember. I was really trying to remember what happened after that. The only thing I can think of is like they thought we were going to play on the island. The only time that we ever talked about playing on the island was like actually during the Ren Fair. What we're going to do is we're going to promote. We weren't going to play with paintball guns. At that time, I don't know if you remember, but there used to be, I don't think they're around anymore, but there was a business that would make these bow and arrows, and they had the little arrow with a little spring on the end. And I guess a lot of people that played paintball, like some paintball fields actually like incorporated it. Yeah, they were using like the inflatable bunkers and everything else like that.
Yeah, we have archery tag now that a lot of people do that, and they're the foam ending. Right, but that might have been version 1. Of that.
Yeah. And it was like a little spring, so it would dissipate the energy and everything else. And we talked about like, okay, maybe we could do that with like some foam swords and like put lipstick on the foam swords and like give people like body armor and let these LARPers like actually go out and kill one another. We talked about that, but again, money. Which we had none. And so it was like, okay, idea for next year. And that was it. That was the only time that we ever really discussed the island. Anyways, so it kind of got hard because, again, it was just more like, okay, let's just focus on, getting things cleaned up and getting things right and everything else like that. We did have a couple more events. We did a couple of private events. And then we also helped out Derek Jones with his MWPL.
You ran an MWPL?
Well, he did.
Yeah.
I just kind of was there and I just helped out with there and nice. Stuff, But so we ran that. And then that was it. Winter came around. We weren't going to do a second game in the fall, because, again, no money, and it was just kind of like, and there's also just kind of, I think there was it's hard to remember, now because it was 7 years ago. Yeah. But there was definite strain, not so much with us, but the owners would like, I think what was happening is people were kind of whispering in the owner's ear and they'd call us up and kind of like air out some grievances. And we're like, what are you talking about? Like, we don't like what? No, that's not the situation. This isn't the situation. Yada, yada, yada. Yeah. We would do our best to, address whatever concerns were there. And essentially what ended up happening is, my career, my professional career was taking off, so I was more towards that, thing that I was actually making money.
There you go. And, the thing's paying a mortgage and allowing you to live and eat.
And so, and now I was kind of on the fence. It's like, hey, do I reinvest in this?
I can't imagine the emotional strain, just the amount of energy that is drained from you in managing the different relationships internally before you even touch the field and before you even plan and host. And I think it's a huge valiant effort to say what came of that because it's a very unique experience. I think from the player's perspective, if you attended his event, leave a comment or something. Hopefully we talk to someone out there because they're going to give a perspective.
Leave a nice comment, please.
A nice comment. But like, you know, who would have thought that much work went into it, and the behind the scenes, the red tape?
6 months. Yeah. 6 months, and getting all the insurance, getting all the licenses, and everything else
for a big thing. And I'm kind of sad to hear. Was there not a game 2 then?
No, not really. What happened is I think it was kind of more in the. I don't remember the timing. The owners called me up and like, hey, we're not going to renew the contract. And in all honesty, we want everybody out. Yeah. You know, and that's really the status of it. We appreciate everything you did. Yeah. You know, you worked super hard. We totally recognize that fact. If you ever want to come back and just like, you know, do something kind of more like with like, you want to host something like with friends and family, like a barbecue, or you want to come out shooting or anything like that, you're more than welcome. Yeah. You know,
it's a very good like overall relationship, but business wise, it's like, we want to pull this back in our court.
And so it's just like, that's fine. You know, cause again, I was like emotionally exhausted, you know, I was physically exhausted. I was just like, I don't know if I really want to sink money back into this. Cause again, I do know the overall agenda for the owners, which I totally agreed with. If I had land like that, I mean, I would run it. I'd run a paintball field. I'd set up a motocross track / paintball field on the same area. Yeah. I'd figure out a way to incorporate it all. But I totally understood because that land was a gem, you know, and they're all like, you had like 4 generations of like family that were going out and enjoying it, you know, and that's a rare thing in today's world. Yeah. And so I totally understood. And so it's just like, that's fine, you know, whatever. You know, we came back, we dismounted the bridge, we got all our stuff, and we kind of, you know, just set it aside. I was like, hey, you know, if you want to use this, if you want to, you know, build something, make a fire, whatever. Yeah. You know, c'est la vie.
I kind of picture like you smoking a cigarette, which you probably don't do. You smoke a cigarette and you like flick it and then it lights on fire and the whole thing, paradise lost. We're out. We're out. Well, that's interesting. And I, off camera for the time that we took a short break, we mentioned, I was like, you're like, I don't want to come off as pessimistic. Yeah. It was just like, there was great intention behind it, and I think we talked more about the fall of Paradise Lost than it was a success. But you have one game under your belt. You have a huge understanding of what it takes to do that. You know what I mean? You probably have that burning desire where if you find, you know, 10, 20 acres off in the right place, it's just like, maybe I'll connect the dots. Yeah. But now you start shifting towards your career that makes you money. You continue to play paintball, I would assume. Yeah. More paintball than motocross at that time, or was it 50-50 then?
No, definitely. Like I got into motocross, I think about 4 years ago. So I used to ride like when I was a kid. You know, I rode for 20 years, and then I had 4 reconstructive surgeries in 4 years.
Jeez.
Yeah, in my 20s, and I was kind of like, you know, I probably need to go to college, and I probably need to get something going before I end up
die by motocross accident.
Well, yeah, end up like as a paraplegic, you know, working at McDonald's. Like, you know, I was like, hey, I need something. So I sold the dirt bike at 25, and you know, just threw myself in school. And paintball was kind of what I threw myself into after that. Yeah, because the adrenaline rush isn't as much, you know, with motocross. Like you know, doing a 120-foot triple versus, you know, like it's fun. Like I do still have that moments of like flow. Like, you know, like as soon as the game starts, like it doesn't matter how like tired I am, how exhausted, how much I'm panting. Like as soon as the game's on, like I'm just there and that's it. And where I find myself most happy is when I'm like have my back up to a tree and I hear the paint hitting the tree and I'm just like, life's great. You know, like getting shot at, I'm just like, this is awesome. You know? Yeah. But no, so essentially like I could still continue to play, you know, and kind of helping out wherever I could, you know, as far as like Ogden paintball. But again, you know, Bernie had a shop up there, so I didn't want to like, you know, like do anything to take business away from him and all that other stuff. So I just kind of, I didn't really, you know, utilize the compressors or anything else and just referred people up the Bernie's area. I played up at his field a couple of times. And then, you know, decided like I'm getting back in the motocross, you know, after 10 years and that's really legit my first love. You know? And so like, did
you wear any JT stuff back then?
No.
Did you know of the JT brand within motocross?
Yeah. That's where it started. Yeah. But no, my only memory with JT paintball was, I don't know. I see this is so out of the loop for me. I guess JT profilers or JT masks are like, you know,
JT flexes,
Pro flexes. Yeah. So my brother had one back in the day, and I threw it away. I didn't know it was actually like worth anything,
dude.
Because all the foam was like it was worthless mask. But my only real experience with JT was trying to change out the lens and tearing off my fingernails. Like, this
Dude,
lens
they
sucks.
suck, man.
I don't understand. I don't
Someone
understand
mentioned
the
that
allure.
already. Oh, Chad mentioned it. He's just like, paintball technology now, like the Dye i3, the Dye i4, the switch lens capability. It's just like, I'm like, man, that's always been a novelty for me because, or no, it's always been commonplace to me.
Standard, yeah.
And then now it's like, what? And you're like, yeah, I changed a JT Proflex. And I was like, oh my gosh, my hands are done. It's crazy.
You had to like
it's funny.
Find like some sort of sharp metal thing. Yeah. Tear off partial your fingernail. I don't know, man. I don't know why maybe it's just me, because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I trade them and I sell them and everything else. It's like, why? But that's cool.
It's the
people
collector,
do it with Jordans,
right?
Yeah. Do it with Jordans.
The collector aspect. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, for me, I'm fine with my V-Force Profiler mask. I'm perfectly happy with that.
I noticed your gear. Your gear hasn't changed much since I've first seen you.
Sure.
Not to say that's not a knock or anything.
No.
I think people find what they use.
Well, you only seen one loadout.
Oh, okay.
You only seen one loadout.
That is true.
I have several loadouts.
Oh, okay.
So my paintball philosophy is kind of like, I don't remember, what was that game called? Tom Clancy's. It was a soldier game. Not. I don't remember what it was called.
It was an old game.
Yeah, it was GRA. What was it called? That's the acronym. It was about soldiers, bunch of soldiers. So this came out when I was getting into paintball, about 2005 or whatever. But you had different loadouts, right? And this also falls in Spec Ops Paintball. I'm really excited when you do that interview. I'm excited.
Yeah. I just friended you, Jason Orvis. Yeah. I am going to message you with Brody and Alan Turner as reference that I'm not a weirdo. I've actually played at your field. But yeah, I'm excited to talk to him. I actually bought a Spec Ops paintball gun off of KSL. Yeah. I don't know if you saw it. It was the Tiger Stripe.
Oh, yeah, you got one.
Yeah. I got that one, and I'm just like, I'm going to kind of like brandish it in front of him.
Sure.
I doubt I'm going to get any big reaction, but it's going to be cool, like a talking piece and something. But
that really set up a lot of my philosophy, my paintball philosophy. So I still have like that, whatever. He had like a dagger and a saber and like a hammer, like vest and everything else.
Yeah.
So that really influenced a lot of like how I actually set up my gear.
Nice.
Now I kind of have gone to like different things, and when I play like a full on scenario, I'll kind of kit whatever it is. But like, I had like my sniper gun. I have a Tiberius T9.1.
Nice.
Another mag fed one, like 7 Phenom with like the Rat 4 mag kit, body kit, whatever.
Yeah.
I
have not seen those.
Yeah. I have my X7 Phenom, just a standard that I play with. That's kind of like my Woods ball gun with the red dot. I love red dots, A lot of people don't, but if you set it up right and you zero it in, like, that red dot, is great. If you shoot good paint, like if you get a red dot and you get crappy paint, don't even bother.
Right.
But and then my E-Tech 5, that I play with.
Yeah, I think I've seen that more as of late. And there's simplicity about grabbing that gun and just going and playing the air hoses and the kit and the pods and the belt and the vest and everything. I like that. If you're ready for that, I think people can hit the field like that, no problem. Yeah. But I'm coming from the mag-fed world where I've got the mags, this, that, and the other, and then I pick up EMEC, and I'm like, oh, perfect. And then I shoot and it hits exactly where I want. I'm like, why did I complicate it so much in the past, But it's all play style and it's all evolution of who you want to be as a player. And I think the ability to have different loadouts. It's funny when you mention loadouts on that Tom Clancy, it's like, oh, Warzone. Like everyone who's Call of Duty Warzone is like, yep, we know loadouts. Yes. All the specifics, all the different changes. And I think that's cool about our sport. You get to do that.
Oh, well, yeah, there's, and one thing I really love about paintball, and I guess kind of airsoft's a little bit to a lesser degree, but what I tell people about paintball, what's so great about it is like, one, you're conditioned to be a good sport, because if you're a jerk, you'll pay for it, one way or the other. Another thing that's cool, I don't know of any other sport where you can actually go out, verse somebody, shoot them up, cause them amount of pain, come back to the spawn area and actually laugh and joke about it. And that's the one thing where I love with new players is you watch them play, you watch them get immersed in it, and they come back and they start just laughing and joking. And I love just kind of just sitting there and just watching them and kind of like almost re-experiencing it.
I completely agree.
And that's one thing I just really, really love about the sport. And just the camaraderie of it. I've noticed that we kind of talked a little bit about it earlier, not too much in depth, but it seems like paintballers just have a different way of like viewing the world and assessing risks and kind of like it's almost like a dominant personality trait that's really interesting to see, because you see it across so many different, like, you know, cultures and races or whatever else.
True.
So it's just so cool to kind of go out there, you know, with a bunch of people that are, you know, have a bunch of different backgrounds, and just have this moment of fun with one another. And, you know, you go back and, like, you know, like I don't know, Diego. That dude has my number, and I get so pissed
Diego
off.
Sosa? Shout out Diego.
Yeah.
Hope
that
you're
guy,
watching.
he's a great player, tons of natural talent.
Yeah.
I love it when he's on my team.
Yeah.
I hate it when he's not, because it's like, great, I'm going to come across Diego, and he's going to shoot me.
Yeah.
You know? But I don't know of any other sport where you can actually, like, see somebody where you could have, like, you know, a competition or whatever else, but you still, like, enjoy it. You still want to see him. You still want, you know, to come out and play and everything else, you know, and there's like that positive, you know, just interaction. Like, I don't know of any other sport where you have that. Like, definitely not team sports like football or baseball or anything else. Like,
so, and I'll touch on a little bit right here.
Sure.
So I came from the football background, and I thought my guys are going to beat me up for saying this. They've already thrown me to the wolves when I say I love paintball more than football, because these are guys I played high school football with, shared a lot of stories, do the whole thing. Yeah. And I think maybe I said that in the wrong way. I love what paintball has done for me post football, because football eventually ended for me in injuries and all the different things. Yeah. But for me, like, I've always been strategist. Like, I love Command and Conquer. We talked about that off screen a little bit. And that kind of dawned the strategy of I love the moving the pieces, the chessboard, the chess not checkers mentality, where it's like you can immerse yourself so deep in paintball and in a fight, and you can either be the guy that takes one shot a game and kills the guy who's running with the flag, or you can be the guy that runs out there and dies 20 times and comes back. I think, like you're saying, like, there's that common denominator, that common ground where it's like it doesn't matter race, height, weight,
gender,
gender, how flexible you are. I don't care. It is a common ground where you can just go out there and play and just be mono. Yeah. I want to thank Brody Dixon for taking the time out of his day and sharing his paintball inspiration, highs and lows, the differences, your perspective. I love connecting with players all across Utah and doing this. And thank you for stopping by.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you've done. Like, we talked about this offline, but I've told other people, you know, if it wasn't for you, like, paintball the fire paintballs, I think in my mind is like kind of in cinders right now. Sure. And they're kind of like isolated pockets, and, like, you know, with airsoft and everything coming up, like, I did not have optimistic, you know, foresight on paintball. Like, I was like, it's probably gonna be dead in 10 years. Yeah. But you ever actually kind of turned that around, and the cinders are starting to gain heat and things like that. Yeah. You know, players like, you know, down at Hobble Creek and Ogden and Ephraim and Eureka are all starting to connect. You know, now that we got, this is gonna be great because, you know, Battle of the Beehive, and you have Las Vegas, you know, out of staters coming in.
Hey, you watched it? Yeah. Yep,
out of staters coming in.
Take
you know,
the trophy.
Are we going to really let them do that?
Right.
Like, serious? Like, this is supposed to be Utah trophy. We can't lose this.
Yes. I think it's building that level beyond just picking up a gun, right? Why do we do it? Why do we do it every week? Why does Chad do it in 20-degree weather and puts 10 cameras on everyone's head? It's crazy. So I think that's a huge compliment to me that I don't take lightly, and I'm nowhere near. I have a list of thank yous to get to where I am today. Yeah. I always say we when we come to projects like this, because there's a lot of people behind the scenes that support this and do this with no money in mind, just the growth of the sport. So I'm fortunate to be in a position to where we can influence some of our future here, to where we don't have to be destined to, you know, we're in a pandemic, but another economic downturn where everyone just throws their gun away or something. I don't know. I think I'm optimistic. So yeah, thanks. I appreciate the compliment.
You're welcome.
Before we tune out here, this is we're deep. We're deep in this podcast. I'm not going to say the minute mark anymore, because I'm probably going to edit some stuff down and trim some stuff up. But if you've made it this far, thank you for checking us out. Thank you for listening to the conversation. Like, share, comment, subscribe, the whole term that everyone likes to throw out there. But do it with intention of growing the sport, and hopefully, you know, visiting some of the scenarios that are coming up. We have Moapa on January 30th. That was just announced. That is a abandoned cement factory that we play. That's awesome. Yeah. That's sweet. That's cool. That's a January game where if you don't like the cold, perfect. Head 3-4 hours south and you're in some great weather. So
Yeah.
come play that. There's another game in the works in February, and then we're shortly on to Red Creek season and some of the games that are going on around there. So just check us out next week. Thanks for coming along. We'll see you next week.